here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a question and answer time, and we're going to put a number up on the screen, I believe, right now. Let's throw that number up there, and you can text your questions to that number at the bottom of the screen, 918-704-5468, and we're going to answer questions as they come in. So if you've got a question right now, you can go ahead and just text that question to the screen, whether it's a question about, what's your favorite book you ever read or wrote on leadership, what's a lesson you learned in this season of life, or whatever that is. But I'm going to start off with just kind of a fun question. What is an embarrassing moment you had on stage speaking to leaders or at a church or anything like that? You've been speaking for how many years?
Oh, I've been speaking. I started speaking when I was 20, as far as preaching. So that'd be 55 years.
Wow. So what's a few embarrassing
moments? And the best question he can ask is, what's the most embarrassing question? What are friends for, huh? What are friends for? Well, I've had dozens of embarrassing moments. So the only reason I'm going to be slow is there are so many. I'm trying to figure out which one. I was in Mexico City about 6 years ago speaking at a very large business convention. It was in an arena, probably 15,000 business people there. And of course it was in Mexico City, so they'd said, of course, it would be simultaneous translation. And that's not a problem. I'm used to that, where they give you the earphones and they're in a booth, and so people hear it. But I wasn't prepared for what it really was. What they didn't tell me is that there wasn't going to be somebody in a booth and there were not going to be earphones, but the simultaneous translation was going to come over the speaker. So that I would speak in English and I'm hearing this whole room is flooded with Spanish. And now I'm going to get to the embarrassing situation in a moment, but I had and I've done speaking for quite a few years. I've spoken over 12,000 times. Honestly, it took me about 5 minutes to even make sure I could get through that. Because, to hear somebody over the loudspeaker doing Spanish while I'm doing English at the very same time, it was very distracting to me. But I got over it. And I thought to myself, it just can't get any worse than this. And then it was like from 9 to 3, it was a long day. I'm speaking all day. And I thought, it can't get worse than this. This is about my worst speaking moment with this translation going through this. And then I got diarrhea.
Oh, man.
Truly. And I have a great sense of humor. But I could hardly find anything worth smiling about in this. And I thought, but I'm laughing. I'm saying, well, what am I going to do here? Because, what am I going to do? So I hung on as long as I could hang on. I don't need to get too descriptive here, do I? But finally I realized, something's going to happen here. Hey, I got to make a move, okay? And so I told the people, I said, the last thing I've just taught about is such an important point. I want you to break off in groups of 5 and spend 5 minutes discussing what you learned from it. And so I got him into discussion, and of course I went off stage and finally got my act together, and I thought I'm okay. And so I came back out, and I taught for about 15, 20 minutes. I thought, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. So I got him in another discussion group. Are you ready? We had 7 discussion groups that day. We really had 7 discussions. And here's what's really funny. And for the last hour, I was okay. If there comes a time when you're going to be okay. But we had 7 discussion groups that whole day. And when it was over, the people that organized this whole convention, they were so thrilled. They said, we have never had a speaker allow the people to participate like you allowed them to participate. And we just thought how great it is. And I thought, if you only knew. If you, it has nothing to do with me wanting anybody to participate. It's like, bail me out because I'm in trouble. So, that would be one of them. I ripped my pants on stage once. I was, I used to do a lot more than I do now, but I used to walk around all the time when I would talk, and there was a railing kind of back over here to my left, and so when I just went over there and sat down and talked to them, because I'll go down and sit on steps and talk to people. I'm very conversational when I teach or whatever, and so I'm on this railing, and I just decided to move over a couple of inches, and I ripped my pants. And so I looked at the people and I said, so I kind of felt back there and I thought, ooh, this is like a gash. I mean, it's a pretty good rip. So I just looked at people and I said, I just ripped my pants. and I'm going to have to teach you from this railing. Of course, they're howling and so I said, now, some of you could help me. If someone would go get me a pair of slacks, I gave them the measurements. And some lady said, I'll go get them for you. And she went and got them for me. And I sat there, for a while. And then I thought I would have fun with them, and because I enjoy life very much. So I finally got it from the railing, and I would lecture like this. I walk back and forth like this, and the people say, turn around, come on, turn. And we had a great, and they brought my pair of pants. I mean, how long do you want me to talk about embarrassing situation? Clumsiness and that kind. There's some things that are just spiritual gifts in my life. They really are.
I love it. What advice would you give to your younger self? This is a text question that just came in. You need a second.
The problem with being young is you lack experience, and there are just certain things you will never know without experience, and so it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage because you just haven't had the years behind you yet. So the advice I tell people all the time, when they ask me that question, I say that it would be really beneficial to you to sit down with people that are 15, 20 years beyond you. And of course, I call them learning. I have learning lunches every month. I still do, where I ask questions. But it would be beneficial for you to sit down and say, I lack experience in my life. So could you teach me some things that you've learned from your experiences? And be very... When I was a young leader, I had a lot of weaknesses, but one of my biggest weaknesses is that I was very directional in my leadership. I always knew what I wanted to accomplish. I always was clear with my vision, and so I was always, let's go charge the hill. I never really needed somebody to show me where the hill was. I knew what I wanted to accomplish, and so I was very directional in my leadership. And I really missed a lot by that. I wish I would have asked a lot more questions. I wish I'd have been more interactional in my leadership. And so one of the big changes I had from young to older was I ask questions all the time. If I'm with you, I will promise you, if I have 30 minutes with you, if you would let me, I'll just ask you half a dozen questions, because every one of you have something to teach me, and I want to learn. And so if I just ask, and the better questions you ask, the better answers you're going to receive. And so if I were you and you're young, I would just try to be with people 15 or 20 years beyond me, maybe 10, not much less than that. And I would just ask questions and teach me from what you're learning, and what are you learning from things that have worked and haven't worked. Just ask questions and learn from them. And I wrote a book a few years ago called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. It's a huge popular book. And it basically is a book about questions to ask. Much of what I know today come from the times I've just asked questions from people. Because if I could sit down with any of you in this room and have 30 minutes with you, I would get a takeaway from you. You know something I need to know. You just do. And the only way I'm ever going to know it is by asking you questions. I don't understand people today who just have conversations without asking questions to learn. So if I was young, I would just have asked more questions when I was young to help make up for the lack of experience.
It's really good. When you spoke this morning to the business leaders, you said you do a learning lunch once a month, and you always come with 7 questions. One of the text questions is, would you be willing to share some of those other questions? You shared one of them. Would you be willing to share some of the other questions that you ask at those learning lunches?
No, I would be glad to share with you the 7 questions that I ask at the learning lunch for a large donation to my nonprofit organization, Equipment. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm having fun. Yes, I'll be glad to share this. I asked 7 questions. I've done these learning lunches for over 40 years, and I have them every month. I have 2 learning lunches, in fact, set up for within the next 3 weeks. And I go to people again that they're just, they have had, they're better than me, bigger than me, smarter than me. I try to get what I call the stretch. The stretch is they're going to say something that's going to stretch me and move me out of my comfort zone, because it's not good to be in your comfort zone. Everything, let me just say this, everything you need but you don't have today, the reason you don't have it is it's because it's outside of your comfort zone. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. And so I work hard on me, and I really work hard on my team of constantly moving us out of our comfort zone. And one of the ways to get out of your comfort zone is to meet people that do things differently than you, have different perspectives than you. I long to talk to people that are not Christians at all, and ask them, does God even come into your mind at all? I've just had, so I go to these learning lunches. 7 questions. Here we go. Number 1, what's the most important lesson you've ever learned in your life? In fact, that was the one I gave at the business breakfast this morning. Question number 2, how has failure shaped your life? I asked that secondly because in the first one, they'll talk about failure. They always do. When you ask them what's the most important lesson, they'll include some loss in their life. So, okay, then how has failure shaped your life? And I just get great answers from people who tell me, well, if I wouldn't have had that failure, I wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have made that decision. So how does failure shape your life? Question number 3. What have you experienced in your life that I should experience? It's a great question. Talk to me. And I love to hear people talk about their experiences that were helpful to them or life-changing to them. What have you experienced, or what have you done? What have you done in your life? I remember at one time when I was probably in my first couple years of learning lunches, I had a guy by the name of Lon Woodrum. I was having lunch with him. And he said, well, John, I have visited every presidential library in America. And he said, you ought to do that because you love leadership and you love history, which I do. 2 of my favorite things, leadership and history. And I looked at him that day and I said, I'm going to visit all the presidential libraries. And so that's something my wife Margaret and I do together, is that we have visited all of them. We visited, every presidential library together, and I spent a day, and I take notes, take pictures, and then I spend the next half of the day pulling out everything that I learned and observed and developing principles and lessons off of them and teachings off of them. But I would have never done the presidential libraries if I wouldn't have had Lon say that's something he does. So I like to know what have you experienced that I need to experience. Another question I ask is, who do you know that I should know? It's a great networking question. In fact, that's how I met John Wooden, and that's how he became a mentor in my life. I was literally having a lunch in Orlando, Florida, a learning lunch, with an educator, a successful educator, and I said, who do you know that I should know? And he said, well, I know John Wooden, and you should know him. And I said, would it be possible for you to arrange a meeting? And he said, yes. And so about a month later, I was flying to Los Angeles to meet John Wooden, who was the great coach of UCLA. Sports Illustrated said he was the greatest coach of all time in the 20th century. Now, can I come back to the questions?
Yeah.
Can I do a little teaching here?
Yeah.
If I can do just a little teaching on mentoring, because I owe a lot to people who have mentored me. I've had a lot of people help me out. Where I am today is because so many people were so kind to let me ask them questions. So when I knew I was going out to John Wooden, so it comes off that question, who do you know that I should know? When I went out, so I'm flying out to meet John Wooden. And let me just say this about mentoring. When you're going to have the opportunity to meet somebody that can help you, can teach you, you make sure that you're prepared for that meeting. Don't just sit down with them and say, oh, now, wonder what I'm going to ask them. So what I did before I met John Wooden, he had at that time written 5 books. And I quickly read all 5 of his books, and I underlined and I got questions out of his books. So by the time I'm on the plane to go to Los Angeles, I literally have 5 legal pages full of questions. And here's what I don't want you to miss. Of course, I knew he was a great teacher. He had such a reputation. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if he would like to mentor me? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I'd have such a good meeting with him that maybe I could come back another time? It was kind of like I'm going to the first time with a goal of being able to see him a second time, because I wanted to develop a mentoring relationship with him. And I only had 1 hour. He told me the way he did it. He had a breakfast at the same restaurant every day, had his own booth. I mean, it's beautiful. So we went to his restaurant for our hour, and so we're sitting there, and we're having like 5 or 10 minutes of kind of just conversation. And to be honest with you, I'm wanting to get to my questions, and then he looked at me and said, John, he said, do you have a question you'd like to ask me? And I said, well, I do, Coach. I said, I got here in my briefcase. Do you mind? And he said, no, pull them out. So I pulled them out, and I put my legal pad on the table in front of him. And he looked at that page, and he saw that it was full of questions. And he looked at me and said, oh, my. He said, are all of those questions for me? Well, I said, yeah, but that's not all the questions. He said, well, what do you mean? I took that legal pad and I went, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He said, you have 5 pages of questions? Yeah, I do, Coach. He said, nobody has ever come to me with 5 pages of questions. I said, I'm not nobody. You don't understand. This is one of the most important times of my life. Oh, he said, let's get started. Well, we have an hour. We stayed at that table for 2 hours. He said, come on over to my house. Let's go. Do you have some time today? I said, yeah, it just so happens it's free. He said, well, come on over to the house. And I went over to the house, and at 3:30 that afternoon, get the picture, we started at 8 in the morning. We were through the first page of questions. And he said, John, he said, this is amazing. He said, we only got one page done. He said, would you mind coming back and I can answer some more questions? And I'm going, touchdown! And so I went back. Now this began a 12-year mentoring relationship. And let me tell you something, when I went back the next time, I said, Coach, before I ask questions, I got to share with you what I've done with what you mentored me on in the last session. Because this is what you said. Is this it correct? You said, oh, this is what I did. Did I do it right? Yeah. And on a couple things, he said, well, if I were you, I would have done it. And then when I finished, I said, now, can I ask more questions? Don't miss this. Not only be prepared when you go to see somebody to mentor them, they're going to mentor you. Make it worth their while by when you come back showing them how you've improved your life because of what they've said. I would never think of taking up your time and not taking action on it. It doesn't seem right. It seems like an unequal mentoring relationship when you're giving and I'm not improving. So every time I'm with anybody, and I still have mentors. I have mentors today. Here's what you said. Here's what I did. Did I do it right? Can I ask some more questions? And I've never felt it was right for me to let somebody pour their life into me and me not give them a good return for that mentoring investment. Does that make sense to you? So there's that, and then the other thing I would say on mentoring, I'm sorry, I know we're on 7 questions. The other thing I would say is within 24 hours after you have written your answers and gleaned, you've got to spend a couple of hours reflecting on what they've said. And then you just send them a quick text or note and say, of all the things you gave me, these are the 3 things that I think I need to work on first. And when we get together, I'll give you an update. But just immediately let them know that what they've done is not like easy come, easy go. It's kind of like you worked hard to give me those thoughts because it's out of your life. And so you just want to give them a return. Does that make sense? Okay. So who do you know that I should know, which was question number 4. Question number 5 is, if you were me, what would you do? What should I do to improve my life? In the little bit that you know me, is there something you can just kind of detect that it would just improve me and it would make me better? So just that of the 7 questions is the most difficult, because the first time you're with them, they don't know you well enough to help you. Normally, after 3 or 4 times, it's a great question, because now they know you enough to say, here, John, I think if you change this area of your life, or if you just did a little bit less of this or a little bit more of that, it would really help you improve. And so it's just a great question to ask, especially after they get to know you better. So what have you experienced that I've experienced? Who do you know that I should know? The sixth question is, what are you reading that I should read? And when they tell me a book, by the way, all the books I buy from recommendations out of Learning Lunches. I just have a whole list of but I ask them, why should I read that book? Why did it help you? I mean, it was a good book, but what made it good for you? And do you think it would make, and the reason I ask that question, I'm trying to see if that's where I am in my life and if it really is going to fit me or not. So sometimes they give me a book I don't buy. Sometimes they give me a book but all the books I buy off of that question. Question number 7. And this is always the last question, and that is, you've been so kind to me today. How can I serve you? What can I do for you? I always ask that last because, again, it seems to me that if they would be kind enough to have a learning lunch and teach out of their life, it seems to me that I ought to give back. And so how can I do that? The other day I had an interesting when I was doing a learning lunch with a guy in Massachusetts, and he's really sharp. He was very close. He was in the Navy, and he was the right-hand person for Jimmy Carter. And so it was a great lunch because I learned so much from him. And so I asked him at the end, okay, what can I do to serve you? And he said, I would like to have a learning lunch with you next month. And I'd like to ask you the very same 7 questions. And we did. We just kind of flipped. In fact, that's the only time. But he just said, that's how you can serve me. I want to flip it, and I want to take those 7 questions and ask you. So the next month we had a learning lunch, and of course we flipped. I think he helped me more than I helped him, but those are the 7 questions that I ask. And now, those don't have to be your 7 questions. Go work on your own. I just give them to you, not like they're the best questions. They just work for me, but you'll probably think of and if you think of a better question, give it to me. Maybe I'll go to 8, or you know what I'm saying? Who knows? I want to learn from you.
I love it. You shared something in the breakfast this morning about paying your kids to read, and that was something you decided to do, something your dad did for you. Would you, not everyone was in the breakfast that's here today, would you just say a quick word on that with parents and even with children in the room that would want to grow as leaders and parents that want their kids to become better leaders, that principle of paying their child to read a book and why that's important?
Yeah, it's, well, my father, our allowance, we received an allowance, but we didn't receive an allowance for doing chores. We received allowance for reading books. And he picked the books out for us. And we were required to read 30 minutes every day. He would give us a book, and whatever he paid for that book is what he would give us when we finished reading it. You know, so today if it was a $30 book, when we finished reading it, he'd give us $30. But what was huge about it is every night in our in dinner, we would talk about the books that we were reading and what we were learning. So our dinner discussions were another learning experience, to be honest with you. But my friends all got paid to do chores. I mean, that's how they got their allowance. And so I went to Dad one time and told him that, you know, I thought it was a good idea. Maybe we should be paid to do chores. And my dad looked at me. He said, that's a terrible idea. I'm not going to pay you to do chores. He said, you do chores because you're part of the family, and I'm not paying you to be part of this family. He said, hey, by the time you were born, you already owed your mother for 9 months in room and board. So, you know, shut up and take out the garbage. But it marked my life. And my older brother would tell you the same, my younger sister. It marked our lives. If I could point back to something that, I mean, by the time I graduated from high school, I had probably read minimum 60 to 70 books about success and about life. And it just changed everything. And I would look at there were, my fellow students, I would look at them and I would see that there was a whole dimension of life that they did not have And it just allowed us to get started earlier. So we did that I did that with my kids. I do that with my grandkids. I pay them to read. But with my grandchildren, my grandchildren call me Papa. They call Margaret Mimi. Before our first our oldest granddaughter's 22, but before she was born, Margaret looked at me one day and said, "John, what are the grandchildren going to call us?" I said, "Well, I have no idea." She said, "Well, I want them to call me Mimi." I said, "Oh, I like that. That'll work." But she said, "I don't want them to call you Pee-Pee." And I said, "Well, yeah, I agree with that too." So they call me Papa. So my grandchildren, when they read something they think is a good statement or a good quote, they'll text me. Because what they're doing is they know that I have a Papa list. And the Papa list is that when a grandchild really gives me a great quote, I put it on the Papa list with their name. And so the cousins get together and they want to know, how many quotes on the Papa list do you have? But then what I do is when I'm with them the next time, I sit down and I say, "Now, you sent me that quote. Let me tell you why it really works. Let me tell you why it made the Papa list." And it gives me another opportunity again to pour into them, things that will help them, hopefully do very well in life. And our grandchildren, we have 5 grandchildren, and they're better than our kids were. They really are. In fact, I had them all together the other day, and I told them, I said, "You're so much better than my own kids." And the grandchildren are just beaming, and my son Joel said, "Of course they are." He said, "We were their parents." And, well, I won't use that one again. Yeah, that one's gone forever. But
So we've got high schoolers in the room today. One of the questions on here is, what are you seeing in the next generation that you would go, this is where we've got to focus. This is what this next generation needs to lead well. You've led and spoken for 50 plus years. You've watched as leaders you mentored became parents and now are leading companies. You look at this next generation, you see what's going on in the world. What concerns you? What do you feel like is important for this next generation to lead well?
It's a great question, by the way. Isn't it great to have all the high schoolers over there? Let's give them a hand, okay? Isn't that great to have them? Yeah. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to have you here. Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of things I don't like about old people. I really don't hang with old people very much. They're old. And one of the things I don't care about old people is that they always think that that when they die, the world's going to hell. They just do. It's kind of like, boy, when we die, it's all, I'm going to die just in time. And I don't think that. I think there's an abundance of problems, but I don't think that, like, I'm the last great generation or whatever. I don't think that at all. So I have much hope for people coming behind me. And I want to do my best to leave a legacy for them in their life. And, everything's changed. I mean, social media has changed everything. I think the one thing I want to say today that we know to be true is that we develop curriculum for kids on values, on how to learn good values, choose them, embrace them, live them. And we've noticed something very important because, values give us a core, an emotional, spiritual core in life that makes it strong. I mean, if you took an empty bag and just put it outside, that empty bag a little wind it would fall over quick, and then a little gust of wind and it's gone. I mean, it falls easy because it has nothing inside. And empty bags just don't stay up straight. And so values give an inner strength and core. And here's what we found to be very interesting. That when high schoolers or when kids have good values, don't miss this. When they really live good values and they embrace good values, they need less validation from the outside. That's a fact. It's backed up by scientific proof. That the better values I have on the inside, the less I need to know what you think of me.
That's good. It's really good.
I mean, is there anything more asinine than people that you don't even know and you're carrying what they say? But it's because, why do we do that? Why is it so important for us to have people that we don't even know give us a thumbs up? Or why is that so important? It's because we don't have values deep down inside. We don't have that inner core. And so what I would say more than anything else is become a person of value and take the great important values of life and learn them and practice them and live them. And it'll give you a strength that will allow you to kind of go forward when everybody else is kind of, going sideways. It'll allow you to go forward. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
It's really good.
Yeah.
What's a list of books you would encourage everyone in the room to read? Maybe some of your top 5 favorite, maybe your books that you would say, read these, or someone else that you read that just was a game changer.
You should read all 86 of my books.
Come on. Go to the Victory Bookstore.
Oh, I'm kidding. No, I'm having fun with you. When I decided to write books, in fact, let me tell you the story. It's a quick story. I had a mentor, Les is his name, and he had written 5 books. I hadn't written any books. I had no desire to write books. I'm now like 23, 24, 25, just starting out. But I never had a desire I love to read, but I didn't have a desire to write a book. But he had written 5 books, and we were having lunch one day, and I said, Les, why do you write books? And he said, I write books to influence people that I will never physically be able to meet or touch. And I leaned into him and I said, I'm going to become a writer. Because that was a desire for me to extend my influence beyond my own personal touch. And that's the reason I started writing. So then I asked myself the question, if I'm going to write, how can I help people improve their life? And how can I help them be successful? And at the age of about 26, I spent a year studying successful people. I mean a very everyday, thorough study of why do some people do really well and some people don't? And I came to the conclusion that successful people did 5 things well. And so I'll give you those 5 things if you want me to, but what I decided was I'm going to help people do those 5 things well. In fact, to be honest with you, I think helping people become successful is what's helped me become successful. So I said, here are the 5 things I think that people who do really well do really well. One is communicate. I think successful people communicate well. They're good at communication. And think about it. Every day you're trying to communicate a thought or an idea. I mean, I'm not talking about just getting on stage and speaking. I'm talking about sitting there and laying out a little plan or a vision for where you want to go. So, in fact, I just wrote a book. It comes out in March. Comes out comes out in 2 months. Comes out real soon. Called The 16 Laws of Communication. It's my 4th laws book. I wrote the 21 Laws of Leadership, the 17 Laws of Teamwork, the 15 Laws of Growth, and now the 16 Laws of, and the laws book almost overnight become million sellers. Because they're based not even on principles, they're based on laws that really will serve you well. So I think, but Warren Buffett, I quoted him in this book. Warren Buffett said, the greatest way to increase your value is learn how to communicate well. The ability to connect with people, communicate with people. I'm talking about not maybe mass, I'm talking about one-on-one conversations, the ability to sell an idea, whatever. So I said, I'm going to write books on communication to help people learn how to communicate. The second one is the one I'm known for the best, and that's leadership. You know, when I became convinced in my 20s that everything rises and falls on leadership. And let me tell you, I was a pastor of a little country church, and I read a book on the 10 largest churches in America in 1972 by Elmer Towns. And when I read that book, I so desperately wanted to meet these 10 pastors because, and I've got a country church of about 100, okay? So get the picture. I mean, these guys got more people in their restrooms than I have in my church. But I wanted to meet them so I could ask questions, I could learn from them. And so I called them on the phone. I got there, and I called, they didn't know me. None of them knew me. And in fact, I started off by saying, my name's John Maxwell. You don't know me. I'm a pastor. But I want to learn. And you have something to teach me. And could I have 30 minutes of your time? And now that was back in 1970, 1971. And I can still remember, I offered them $100 for 30 minutes of their time. And I only made $4,800 that year. It was a lot of money for me. But I was so passionate to learn. And I had to get their attention. And $100, well, it was big for me. But I wanted to let them know, I'm not trying to just take time from you. This means something to me. So to make the long story short, of the 10 I called, 2 said yes and 8 said no. And there's a lesson here too of teaching. If I can stop for a moment, do another teaching. Only 2 of the 10 said yes. The other 8 said no. They didn't know me. They could. I mean, why? Why? Even if I'm going to give them 100, why should they meet with me? Now, what happens is, so many times we let the 8 that say no put a burden on us. And the tendency is that when we're not doing well is to stop. And there's no attraction in stopping. Action is where the attraction is. So I said, well, 8 said no, but 2 said yes, so I'll take the 2 that said yes. And so I made appointments with the 2 that said yes, and I went to them, already had the $100 check made out to their name, already done, and I already had my list of questions to ask, and I would sit down, and I had my tape recorder, and I would ask them the questions, and only for 30 minutes, and then I would say thank you very much, and I'd give them the $100. And in both those occasions, and they weren't together. In fact, the 2 didn't. They didn't at that time know I was going to anyone else. And in both occasions, I happened to be meeting with them right before lunch, and both of those pastors said, would you like to go to lunch with me? And I said, oh, yeah, I'd love to go to lunch with you. Now I've got lunch with them, and I don't know if you've ever had lunch with your hero, but the food doesn't go down. It just doesn't go down, so I just kind of moved the food around the plate. I'd ask them more questions, and both of them laid hands on me and prayed over me. And I can still remember going to my car in the parking lot, putting my briefcase in the back seat, and laying my head on the steering wheel and bawling like a baby. God, if you did that for them, can you do that for me? What's interesting is that I developed a relationship with those two pastors. I mean, I was still a kid. I was only 24. I was only a kid, and I only had a little country church, but they could see within me that I had a passion to do something hopefully great for God. And as I began to talk to them, I shared with them about the other 8. And they went and got the other 8 and said, you need to meet with this kid. And in the 3 years, I got to have that meeting with all 10 of those pastors. And isn't it a beautiful story if you'll just walk through the door that's open?
It's good.
I mean, how many times we say, well, if I don't have all 10 doors open, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something, friend. You're not going.
Yeah.
All 10 doors aren't supposed to open for you. One's supposed to open.
So good.
And when you go through that door, then there's another door on that other side. And as you walk in obedience, those doors began to open. And so I met those 10, and many of them became really great friends of mine. And by the time I was 28, I had the 10th largest church in America. And it was because they took time and they taught me. I was like a son to them, I guess, but they just helped me a lot. So the leadership, and the thing that I learned from them more than anything else is it's there that I learned that you have to have good leadership to build a great work. And they were different kinds of leaders, but they all led and influenced well. So I'm talking too long. I'll finish this off right now. There are 5, remember? Communication, leadership. The third area is in equipping. The ability to train, develop, and equip people. The ability to develop teams. When you become an equipper, you begin to compound all of your returns. Yeah. Equipping is when I do it, I add. When I teach others to do it, I multiply. So I said, I'm going to teach people how to equip people. I'm going to write books on teamwork and equipping, because it's so essential to success, and successful people do it so well. I mean, successful people have other people working with them and working on their team, and you know, they have active income, but they also have passive income. They understand the process. Number 4 was in the area of attitude. So highly successful people, they just get back up. They're tenacious. They have hard days, but they don't stay down. They just have an attitude that allows them to rebound, and the next day they're back in the game. They're not. Let me just, you know what I learned a long time ago? You can't moan and lead at the same time.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one has ever gotten up in the morning and said, I would like to follow a moaning, complaining leader. Yeah. They have enough problems. They're looking for a leader that can pull them out, lift them up. And so attitude, just the whole, you know, so I write books on attitude, you know, and then the 5th area was in the area of relationships. Just the ability to connect with people. My gosh. I'm always amazed at people that are in the people business that aren't any good with people. And I just look at them and say, really? You need to be a toll booth operator. Yeah. You know, people won't go along with you if they can't get along with you.
Yeah.
You know, I know the first step of winning people to Jesus isn't to be a Christian. It's just be nice. Yeah. Can you be nice? You know, I just want, if Christians would just be nice, we'd have a revival tomorrow.
Come on. Christians
aren't nice. I don't even like most Christians. In fact, I just get around Christians, say, I've got to go find my sinner friends. Dear Lord. Yeah. You know, Christians wear me out.
Well, hopefully we're not wearing you out.
No, you're not. You know I'm having fun with you. I'm having fun with you.
It's so good. It's so good. There's literally 100+ questions to ask here. There's a couple of ones that I was thinking of as well that go along with this. You know, you said something about just being nice. One of the questions here was, how can I lead people if they don't respect me? And I think one of the things you kind of answered that question already is you earn the respect by being someone that they can like being around, being kind, being nice. Is there any other thoughts on that as well?
Well, my thought is very simple. I watch how people that are, quote, important or successful, I watch how they treat little people. And I don't like that phrase, little people, because people aren't little. I'm talking about, I watch how people that are successful treat people that like serve them at a table, waiters or waitresses. I mark a person quick if they expect other people to serve them instead of them serving them. I don't like, I do a talk. I'm going to write a book on it called Success Stabilizers. And basically the thesis of the book is that when you become successful, you become very unstable. And how do you stabilize yourself and secure yourself so that you don't do stupid things? And so there's a list of, of stabilizers and things. And one of the problems is, I think, of successful people is they get put on a pedestal. And people look out, they put them up there, and they think they're better than they are. And by the way, they're not that good. Yeah. And I don't like titles. I don't like positions. I don't like corner offices. I don't like any of that. I'm not into. Let me tell you something. That has nothing to do with leadership. When people think that they have to have some kind of a status or title to be a leader, it's like even in an introduction. I tell people, could you just say John's here and let me talk? I mean, good Lord. If you're good, you don't need a great introduction. And if you're bad, a great introduction won't help you. I mean, I've heard a lot of speakers, they're so bad, I want to go back to the introduction. I just say, just show the replay again. That's so much better than they really are. So I walk slowly through the crowd. And so I tell leaders, there are times you cannot help the fact that people put you on a pedestal. But let me tell you something. When you go home at night, you better take yourself off.
That's good.
Take yourself off. You're not that good. All of us in this room are one step from stupid. So just treat people with kindness. Just value. The issue is the problem in the Christian community today is we don't value people. And especially we don't value people that don't live a life like us. And it's just so un-Jesus-like. So anyway, just value people. And if you value people, you'll treat them right. Yeah. But if I devalue you, or I don't think you're of value or whatever, then I won't treat you right.
So good. So good. How many of y'all are just learning so much right now? Everything he's sharing. You don't travel often to speak at churches. Why did you choose to come to Victory?
Because you just keep asking. You're like a beggar. There's sometimes the only way you can get rid of people is say yes.
Are you trying to get rid of me?
I'm kidding him, and I'm kidding him. But people I love, I tell them in our group, you better be able to take it because we let each other have it constantly. So anyway, I'm having fun with you. No, the reason I don't have, my schedule doesn't allow it. But we have. The reason I really do it is because you help us with legacy for our missions work. And by the way, I get nothing. I never take, when I go on missions trips and so I pay my own expenses. I don't take a penny. I give millions of dollars to the cause myself. So I don't take anything. But you have been so helpful to us. And so if you heard me talk about transformation last night, you're a part of that because that's what we do. So you're vested in it. And so when I do go to a church, which is rare, but when I go to a church that has, loves the vision that we have, and so, and thank you for being so faithful. Thank you for giving, and we will always steward your work or steward your dollars well, and we'll do it with great integrity. But I don't forget the people that really love what I love and do what I love. So that's why, that's why I'm here. And by the way, I've loved it. You've been so kind to me and so fun to be with, and I've enjoyed it. I've just enjoyed you immensely. So much love, and just always remember, my name's John, and I'm your friend. If you just remember that, that's really that's probably about all I care. Just know that, and if I can be your friend, then that makes me feel good.
Well, before you leave, let me just say this. The reason we got involved sowing into what their missions is doing, every day 1,000 people are led to Christ through John Maxwell's evangelistic efforts, what they do.
But let me just explain something about those 1,000. They're not church people at all. You have to understand, my world, the people that I interact with, I'm not trying to be harsh. The church isn't even on their radar screen. They're not thinking about you. And when they get in trouble, their first thought isn't, I've got to call a pastor. They're lost people. They're lost people that Jesus died for. So when we talk about 1,000, we're not doing this in crusades with a bunch of Christians and stuff like that. When you're on a transformation trip with me, they're all lost. But then we earn the right. We earn the right to love them and value them until there comes a place where they're ready. They're truly hungry to know God. And then we have the privilege of leading. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, it's powerful. It's powerful. But I think one of the things that makes you just a very likable leader, that everybody enjoys reading your books, everybody enjoys listening to what you have to say, is you add value to people before you ask for them to add value to you. And you asked us to get involved with what you were doing, but before you asked, you brought so much value into me and Ashley. You invited us out to your house, and we ate dinner with you, and then you gave us our Maxwell Leadership Bible. And then you brought us into your office, and you began showing us how you wake up early every morning, and you write notes that God speaks to you. And then you gave us those personal notes. I don't know if you remember this, but little note cards of things God spoke to you. And that time that we spent with you, where you just invested in us before you ever asked anything. You taught last night that we're called to add value to people, not ask for them to value us, but to add value. That when you do that, people are way more likely to get involved with what you are running with. And I thought, you live and model what you write about, what you teach about. We're honored and so grateful that you said yes to speaking this year. And we would still invest in what you're doing if you never came and spoke here. But thank you. Thank you for coming. Can we stand to our feet? How many of y'all have gotten a lot out of today or last night? So good. Would you pray a prayer over us today? Just a blessing over the church, over the students, the college students.
Yeah. Lord, we're grateful that we could come together, and grateful that we could not only come together, but we can come together in your name that's above all other names. And I thank you for letting me be here and speak to these beautiful people and meet them and become a part of who they are. I think of our high schoolers here. They're so young. They have their future in front of them. I pray to God that you would make them bigger on the inside than they are on the outside. That you would begin to do a fresh work in their life, a new work that would mark them and begin to put them on a journey that would be pleasing to you. Same with the college kids, the parents. Lord, may we realize what an investment we have in our children. Just bless Paul, and Ashley, and the leaders here, the staff here at Victory. I'm just asking that this will be their greatest year. And when I say greatest year, may more people come to Christ this year. than ever before in this congregation. May this be the greatest year for winning souls this church has ever experienced. And may they just be salt and light in their community, and just cover them and protect them and love them unconditionally. And may they just every day walk with the joy of knowing that we are your children and that you're our Father, and we love you much. We just ask you now to bless us as we go about in our areas of giftedness and our areas of calling to do your work. May this be a year where we just grow so that we can help others. In your name I pray. Amen.
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 Can I do something with you? Pastor Bill Johnson, would you come up on stage? The pastor of Bethel Church, Pastor Bill Johnson, is in the room today. He's attended every session to listen and to cheer on his friend, John Maxwell. Would you pray a blessing over John for pouring into us? And can we stretch our hands out?
Thanks so much for this living offering. Thanks for this one who has said yes and demonstrates that yes all over the world so consistently, so faithfully. And I know your blessing rests upon him, and we get to receive from that. But I'm asking that this year would be the most unusual year of outpouring, most unusual year of favor, of increase, of blessing, that even childhood dreams and desires that have never yet been touched would come to life this year. And that this year would be a year of unprecedented breakthrough. I'm asking, Father, as the God of the breakthrough, Baal Perazim, the God of the breakthrough, would come and work wonders in and through this man. We thank you for him. I thank you for his yes. I thank you for how he's deposited in us. Let there be great return this year, not only upon him, but his children, his grandchildren, all under his influence. For the honor of the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.